I don't understand the seismic rapid data. I haven't studied it.
Hello and welcome to Field Interference. This is your host, Ryan G. My guest today is Dr. Abraham Hafiz Rodriguez, or Abe. He received his bachelor's in biology with a focus in neurobiology and a minor in chemistry at University of Iowa. He received his MD at University of Illinois College of Medicine, and his postgraduate was a specialty training in neurological surgery, and he is now in a residency. He is a doctor specializing in brain surgery at University of Missouri Healthcare. Hi, Abe. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me, Ryan.
I wanted to have Dr. Rodriguez on the show to discuss his questions into 9/11 and how he came to the understanding of where did the towers go, which is that the towers turned to dust in midair. So, Dr. Rodriguez, how is it that you came to begin questioning the 9/11 events?
The first real incident that I remember that led me to question 9/11 was becoming very concerned with the wars and repeatedly hearing on television that the wars were happening because of 9/11 and as a response to 9/11. And this was around 2008 when I was getting towards the end of studying biology at the University of Iowa in undergraduate college. And I remember becoming very concerned that our country was on this trajectory to cause all this harm and to drop all these bombs when there's so many people here at home that really need our help and so many things could be improved. And so it's really just my concern for peace and wanting to promote peace that led me to become very concerned. And that's what led me to actually, unfortunately, I'm much wiser now, thankfully, but unfortunately at the time, that led me to become a supporter of Barack Obama, unfortunately, back in 2008, because I didn't think that all the things he was saying were going to turn out to be lies and false promises, but at least at the time they sounded very good, and it sounded like someone who wanted to promote peace and wanted to end these wars and wanted to close Guantanamo Bay. So I naturally became a supporter of him and started telling other people that they should look into him and consider voting for him. And one of my wiser friends kind of called me out at the time, and I made a Facebook post promoting Barack Obama back in 2008, and she called me out and said, he's a liar, he's not going to change anything, you need to look deeper into these topics. And one of the topics she mentioned was actually 9/11. And she referred me to some websites that helped me to be exposed to some information that made me feel very confident in my understanding that we had been lied to, that the 9/11 official story, known as the 9/11 Commission Report, was filled with lies and inaccuracies and omitted testimonies. And I became very concerned that we had been lied to and that we were going to war with these countries based on lies. And that was very unsettling for me. So I naturally started searching more for the truth within 9/11 and spreading information and awareness about 9/11 truth. And I ended up starting to support organizations like Alex Jones and Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. And I was very concerned, and that felt like to be the right solution for me, was to support those organizations that appeared to be doing something about it. And so in my process of donating a little bit to Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, I'd make just a small $20 donation every couple months, and I think over the course of the year it totaled to be around $80 to $100 or something. But I would share their DVDs, I would share their videos, their website links, all sorts of stuff on the internet. And one day, in one of the places I shared it with, in some Facebook 9/11 Truth group, I encountered this other PhD professor who was a biochemist, and it was the first time I'd really encountered a very intelligent, academically accredited person, which was on the path I was on. I wasn't a doctor yet. I was still just in medical school at the time. But I I remember feeling so awesome to meet this other really smart person who was concerned and was listening to what I had to say, and then she even went further and shared some information with me and said, you know what, bombs don't explain what happened. They don't even come close to explaining what happened. And so you should check out all this other set of facts, Abe, that you have not seen before. And she referred me to Dr. Judy Wood's website, who's also a PhD professor and an engineer and a very well-qualified individual to be discussing and analyzing evidence regarding this topic. And what I found at her website was it just blew me away. And there was this collection of facts that were so well documented, so well referenced, with almost all of the sources provided, things that just could not be ignored and could not be dismissed, that showed conclusively that bombs do not explain what happened. In fact, the only thing that really explains what happens is the fact that those buildings were turned to fine dust in midair. And the only thing that really can do that is consistent with the evidence, is a general type of weapon known as a directed energy weapon. And it sounds very difficult to swallow when you hear that being said without first seeing the facts. And so I'd really like to come back to the facts later in the talk after the story.
Well, if you don't mind, I wanted to mention that Dr. Wood does not name a weapon or a specific device that has caused the destruction of the towers, but she does say that there could be a collection of weapons or technology that caused the destruction, and they could have something to do with directed energy. So explain what brought you to understand this possibility.
So it really was facts, and irrefutable, well-sourced facts that could not be dismissed, could not be explained away by other things, and certainly could not be explained by explosives that were conclusive. And the analogy I like to give people is that if I had my attorney provide you with a collection of well-documented, well-referenced, irrefutable facts about a pet that I owned, you could draw some conclusions about the pet. So, for example, if my attorney told you that I had my pet was a mammal, that it was related to wolves, that it's known as man's best friend, that it has 4 legs, that it wags its tail when it gets excited, that it likes to eat from under the table, that it's used by hunters to flush out game and to retrieve game, it's used by police to sniff out various drugs, that it barks, that it likes to chase cats, that it commonly is taught to sit, stay, and roll over. The facts, the list of facts could be endless, but eventually you would have enough facts that you could know, not guess, not theorize, but actually know beyond any reasonable doubt that he is saying that I have some type of pet that is a dog. You don't have enough information to say what color the dog is. You don't have enough information to say what specific breed or size of a dog I have, but you can actually know that I own some type of general pet known as a dog. And that's what the evidence from 9/11 shows us. It shows that, without a doubt, there is definitely some type of general weapon called a directed energy weapon that was used to turn those buildings to fine, very fine dust in midair before they ever hit the ground. And it's irrefutable to say that. And I encourage everyone to look into the topic more and look into the facts more so that they can know that as well. Because it feels really good to know it, and it's making the world a better place that this truth is coming out, not just because of the technological implications and how the technology really can be used to improve the world once it becomes more publicly available and out of the hands of just some bad people that want to use it on 9/11, but also because it's self-inspiring too, and it really inspires you to look at the facts for yourself and not just take people's words for it, and to really dive into each topic for your own, with your own intelligence and your own senses, to analyze what information there is to be analyzed and to draw your own conclusions from it, rather than just hiding behind, say, the experts, or hiding behind what television says. So I saw all these facts on her website, things like the actual raw seismographic data recorded from 9/11 in New York City that's hosted by the Columbia University Seismology Group, the major seismographic institute of New York City area. they have that information freely available for the public, so you can go see that for yourself. Things like the University of Alaska magnetometer data and all of the different magnetometer stations that detected a large electromagnetic disturbance that happened just as 9/11 happened, that is not explained by any type of solar flare or solar activity. There's something that disrupted the Earth's magnetosphere just as 9/11 happened, and that is irrefutably shown by all 6 magnetometer stations that are ran by University of Alaska.
So
again,
is it possible that the hurricane did that?
It certainly could be related, but those things, those magnetometer stations were in Alaska, and so it's not clear whether that was the hurricane or whether it was something related to the hurricane. But I don't want to get ahead of ourselves because I want to continue to share the story first, and we can come back to these facts. So I found out facts like this that were just mind-blowing and very concerning, and so I naturally started telling people about that and telling people about Dr. Judy Wood and pointing people to her website where all these facts were freely available for anyone to look through and anyone to question and understand. And then I went back to these other truth groups to see if perhaps any of this information was on their websites, and it was not. None of these very important facts were on the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth site or on Alex Jones's website. It's baffled as to why these people who claim to be searching for the truth, why they were not sharing all of these truthful, factual, very important pieces of evidence. And it just didn't seem right to me. So I actually ended up messaging Richard Gage, sent him an email, asking him if he knew about these facts on Dr. Judy Wood's website, and if he did know about them, I'd like to know how he feels about them and why they're not on his website, given the fact that they are very important and need to be considered in any investigation of 9/11. And they should not be omitted and just completely not present on his website. And rather than getting a reply back from him, I didn't get any answer to my question, and I actually got banned from their website. I went back a couple weeks later to see if maybe there was an update or maybe if I got a message through their website, since I'd never heard back through the email. And when I went back to check, it turns out that my account and profile had been completely deleted, even though there was no controversial information or any reason for my profile to have been deleted. All they had done was send him a private email. And
there was no response, no message to you?
No, not at that time. So I was very concerned by that. It felt very unprofessional and very suspicious, especially considering that I was a donor and supporter of them for over a year, or approximately 1 year. So I naturally started telling people that. I was going to other truth forums, and I would ask other people if they had these experiences with 9/11 truth, and I would tell them about what happened to me and tell them what information I had sent them that led to that action. And I was really turning people on to Dr. Judy Wood's website and the facts that are presented there. And that is when I got contacted by them. I ended up getting contacted by not Richard Gage, but by this volunteer coordinator named Mark Graham. And he basically tried to soften my concerns and say that he was sorry, that they did that, but they felt like there was a potential that because I had come across all this information, there was a potential that I could put that into my Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth profile, or I could use that information to contact other people's profiles and send it to them, and they didn't want that to be happening because they, quote, don't agree with her. Or what he said was, it's not within the scope of our mission. And regardless of whatever that means, when someone's just sharing facts, it's amazing that they would delete someone's account completely to prevent them from sharing facts before they ever even had shared those facts, regardless of how they feel about those facts. Number one, it's not in line with the truth. Number two, very professional and very disrespectful to just delete someone's profile that is a donor and supporter of you, just in case they might post something you don't like in their profile before they've ever posted anything like that in their profile. So it just felt really suspicious. We took lots of screenshots of that and documented it, and he ultimately ended up offering to refund my donations, to if I would stop telling people what happened, if I would be quiet. And I didn't accept that offer from them because I felt like it was more important to tell people what happened and tell people the truth than to just get my little $80 back or whatever it was. I really didn't care about that. So I started telling people about that. I added that incident to my story, kept telling my story, kept sharing the facts. And then I got contacted by 2 high-ranking retired military officers. And keep in mind, I was still just a medical student. I wasn't even a doctor yet. And so, I'm a nobody. I still am a nobody. I'm just one person here on this earth trying to do the right thing. But to be a medical student and not even have a real strong degree behind my name or anything made me an extra nobody. And the fact that these high-ranking military officers wanted to contact me to try and convince me of whatever they wanted to convince me of was very suspicious for me. So I just kind of wanted to share those 2 encounters really quick, and I think that's most of my story then. So the first one came.
You're saying you had 2 military officials visit you after this after being banned from AE 9/11 Truth?
Yes, and they didn't visit me. They just contacted me. They both contacted me through. The first one contacted me through private email. Somehow he got a hold of my private email address and emailed me there. And the second individual contacted me privately through my YouTube channel. He sent me a private message, and that led to conversations through email. So the first individual was named U.S. Army Major, retired Doug Roke. And Roke is R-O-K-K-E. Major Doug Roke. And he actually lived in the area that I was going to medical school, which was near Champaign-Urbana in central Illinois. And he initially started by saying, you need to stop talking about Dr. Judy Wood and those facts, like she's wrong. And yeah, she shares some important facts, but her interpretation of those facts is wrong, and it actually means that explosives were used. And he basically tried to convince me that explosives were used just by sharing his opinion. He didn't offer any concrete facts to refute anything that I understood. He didn't offer any new facts that would change my mind. He simply said, she's wrong, I'm right, listen to me, trust me. And that didn't feel right. I'm a scientist. I was a scientist at the time, too. I had studied biology for so long and been involved in research for so long that I know better than to just take someone's word for something. I need to actually look into what they're saying, look into what facts their opinion is based on, and then maybe make an opinion about it. And so I wanted to know more, and he said that he had something very important he wanted to share with me, that he could only share with me in person. And he said that he wanted me to come to his private dwelling, which was several miles outside of town, out in the country. And that was the only place he would share this special information he had with me.
That seems very creepy right there. I mean, I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely raised suspicions inside of me, and it made me feel like I'm just a medical student, if this guy has got information that's that special and that powerful, why isn't he throwing it out in the public? Why isn't he talking to Congress about it, talking to law enforcement people about it, talking to people that actually can do something about it? Why is he trying to tempt a medical student to come meet with him so he can just show it to him in private about? And so I was suspicious, but still very interested, so I wanted him to meet me in a public place. I asked him to meet me at a coffee shop in a downtown area so that we could at least be in a public place. And he refused to. He said that he wouldn't share the information with me unless I came to his private dwelling outside of town. And so that further raised my suspicions that this individual would not be willing to meet me in a public place. So I didn't know what to do, and so I turned to my dean of the medical school, who I had a good relationship with at the time, and I had a meeting with her and expressed some of my concerns about 9/11 and expressed that this individual wanted to meet with me but refused to meet with me in a public place, only would meet with me if I came to his private home outside of town. And she told me not to. She said, that does not sound good, don't do that, it's better to be safe than sorry. And she said she was going to look into the situation a little bit, since he lives in the city, or technically lives near the city. And it turns out that he actually used to work for the University of Illinois, so she was able to find some records on him, I guess. And it turns out that he was fired from the University of Illinois. He worked as a janitor. He was fired from his janitorial position for lying and telling people that he was a professor for the University of Illinois, when in reality he was just a janitor. And so the fact that there was actual well-documented lies from this individual further raised my suspicion to the extent that I felt like this is not worth it. I don't want to risk something happening. I'm going to tell him that the only way I'm going to meet with him is if it's in a public place, end of story. And I sent him an email explaining that, and I never heard back from him ever again. He never replied to any subsequent email that I sent him. He just kind of got quiet and disappeared.
Well, I think, of course he didn't, because, I mean, he wouldn't have wanted anybody to hear what he was saying and probably the blatant lies that he was telling you.
Yeah, I agree. That definitely was. I definitely imagine he was wanting to spread some lies. And so then the second military encounter was about 2 or 3 weeks after that. I was continuing to post almost daily about different facts I would want to share on Facebook from Dr. Judy Wood's website, and different stories of mine that I had, different experiences I would attach to the facts. And then about 2 or 3 weeks after that first encounter, I was contacted by retired Soviet nuclear intelligence officer Dmitry Kalizov. And as many people within the 9/11 truth community know, Dmitry Kalizov is an individual who claims that as a previous Soviet nuclear intelligence officer, he had privileged knowledge of knowing that when the Twin Towers were built, they actually planted nuclear bombs beneath each of the towers, and that on September 11, 2001, those bombs were detonated, and that is what turned the towers to dust in midair, was nuclear bombs going off underground, sending their blasts vertically through the towers. And just, to any rational thinking individual, right off the bat, there's already the concern, the two big concerns. That number one, the towers were turned to dust from the top down, not from the bottom up. And number two, the fact that there were numerous survivors in the lower levels of the towers, like Stairwell B, which you and I have discussed before.
Not to mention, if you've seen a nuclear blast, you know that it's extremely bright, it's extremely large, and it's unmistakable, basically. I mean, I definitely didn't see that nuclear blast happen, so I also didn't see many nuclear blasts. I didn't see anything exactly resembling a nuclear blast, except maybe the speed of the dust and debris.
Yeah, you're correct, and another big elephant in the room that would have been there if real nuclear warheads were used was the ionizing radiation. Geiger counters would have been going off like crazy. You can't hide that stuff, and nuclear bombs, just in the way they work, they leave radiation that would set off Geiger counters and give people radiation sickness and stuff. It's just ridiculous to think that this is what this guy's trying to push. But I wanted to do the scientific thing. I wanted to keep an open mind and at least listen to what he had to say. I didn't want to just blindly dismiss him. I wanted to keep an open mind and hear any truth there was to be heard. So he wanted me to watch a 4-hour presentation of his. I watched the whole thing, start to finish. And it was just filled with a lot of nonsense, a lot of, trust me, I know, please believe me, I'm Dmitry Kalizov, a Soviet nuclear intelligence officer. There were various random facts in there that helped to convince someone that we had been lied to about the official story. Those facts are all over the place. They're also on Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth's website, of course. But he offered no real proof to show that nuclear bombs were used on 9/11. And whenever it came down to it, it would always end up being him saying something like, I had knowledge of this because I was in the privileged position of being a Soviet nuclear intelligence officer, so trust me, take my word for it. And that is the wrong way to go about truth-finding, because as we know, a lot of times the words we're hearing, especially words from prominent individuals and from the television, end up being lies. And that's why we need to stick to the facts that have references and sources so that we can all dig into those and agree on those, because those are the things that cannot be disproven.
Right, and that's why Dr. Judy Wood's words are very important, and the way she analyzes evidence tells us to not do the trust me method, but use evidence and use logic and come to your conclusions through that evidence.
Absolutely. And a lot of people within the truth...
I'm sorry, we'll be right back after this break.
Okay.
All right, we're back with Dr. Abraham Rodriguez, and we are discussing Dr. Judy Wood and why her evidence has compelled us to speak about it to the public.
Yeah, we were just kind of finishing talking about how I'd been contacted by these two military individuals once I woke up to Dr. Judy Wood and all of the facts that she had put forth, and how important those facts are, and how the military individuals that had contacted me, they didn't address those facts, and they didn't provide facts that disproved anything. They just basically offered their opinion and said, "Trust me, Abe, believe me, Dr. Judy Wood is wrong." But they never actually addressed the fact. They just basically said, "Take my word for it, take my word for it." And so we kind of had just finished discussing the importance of not taking anyone's word for it, including not taking Dr. Judy Wood's word for it. It's much more important to actually just look at the facts that she has compiled, and to actually just see what they tell you on their own, see what you can understand from those facts on your own. And it's just amazing how important those facts are. It really is. So the final laugh, I guess, I got to have about the architects and engineers for 9/11 truth situation, which we talked about during the first half of our discussion, was after all this happened and the dust settled, I became even stronger and stronger in my understanding of all of these facts that Dr. Judy Wood has gathered, and I was sharing them very ferociously. I think making a post every day. I created a YouTube channel full of videos for people to browse through. I created a blog so that I could create some articles and post a compilation of facts and videos in a more visually easy to digest way, and was just making all these efforts to try and raise awareness about these facts. And then I found out that towards the end of my medical school, while I was still in Central Illinois.
Say that again. Towards the end of your. Say that again.
Oh, towards the end of medical school, while I was still living in Central Illinois, I found out that Richard Gage was on a paid speaking tour, and that he was going to be coming through the Central Illinois area to do one of his 9/11 Truth presentations. And I thought, what a better chance, to confront him and ask him, why did you ban me from your website? Why did you block me from your website just for sending you an email to ask you if you knew about these important facts, because I don't see them on your website at all. You never talk about them in your presentation. So I thought it'd be a perfect opportunity to try and get an answer to that original email at this upcoming presentation. So he came to town, and I went to the presentation, and at the end, during the Q&A session, I got to ask him some of those tough questions. I stood up, explained who I was, explained that I had been deleted from the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth website just for sharing that one harmless, fact-filled, question-filled email to Richard Gage, and then I proceeded to ask him those questions. So I asked him, why aren't these facts on your website? These facts are really important. They are the most important facts related to that entire terrorist attack. Why are they not on your website? And I got to hear his answer to that. I got to hear his answer to why aren't you talking about these things that thermite does not explain? And you can I recorded the whole thing on videotape, and so you can hear him admit that he has not studied certain facts, even though they're very, very important. He admits, for example, as you can hear with the intro to your radio show, that he has never studied the Columbia University seismographic data from Columbia University Seismology Institute in New York City. He's never studied that. And as an architect, it's amazing, because that's the one thing that an architect who is not a scientist, but an architect is still an intelligent person, that's one of the things that they actually are very familiar with, is seismographic data and studying how various earthquakes can affect the building structures that they are composing. And so to hear that
you would think. I mean, right?
Yeah, I agree. To hear him admit to that on camera, I was just like, wow, I'm glad that we are recording this right now. And then he went further, and I asked him, well, what about all the toasted cars? There was over 1,400 cars that were warped and mangled in all of these ways that are not consistent with falling debris, that are not consistent with hot pieces of debris or explosions. They're just warped and twisted in this very strange way that is not typically seen, but is similar in nature to some of the effects they have produced in a laboratory setting using directed energy to toast different metals and different objects. And I asked him, how come you're not talking about those? Like, that is a huge, very important piece of information that needs to be addressed. And he admitted on the recording that he's not sure what can explain that. He literally says that. He goes, I don't know what can explain that. And I go, well, why don't you tell people about that? That's important information. That's over 1,400 cars that are just completely destroyed. And he says, because I'm not trying to ask questions that will lead people to ask more questions. He goes, I'm trying to raise questions that will directly lead people to demand a new investigation. And so you can watch the videos for yourself and hear his responses and see his body language and his tone of voice for yourself. With the amount of in-depth investigation and fact collecting and data analyzing that Dr. Wood has done, it's just irrefutable. It is beyond any reasonable doubt that those buildings were turned to find dust in midair by some type of directed energy weapon. And people want to label it, they want to call it a theory, or they want to call it speculation, but that's not true, because it's actually an irrefutable conclusion that is inescapable if you just understand the large body of available facts and evidence that is there. It is an irrefutable conclusion, similar to how we talked about the irrefutable conclusion about the type of pet that I would own in that hypothetical example, where you have that body of facts and you can then extract a conclusion from that beyond any reasonable doubt. The theory comes in when you want to try and guess what color or breed of dog I own in that example. And in this case, it would be theory or speculation if we were to try and guess the serial number of the weapon or the exact location of the weapon. That's why it's not good to do that, because that is theorizing, that is speculation. But to say, I know beyond any reasonable doubt that a general type of weapon known as a directed energy weapon was used to turn most of those towers into fine dust in midair before they ever hit the ground, that is complete fact. And a lot of people aren't there in their understanding yet to be able to know that and understand that for themselves. So I really encourage anyone that's listening and anyone that you know in your life to really just go study the facts. Take some time. It does take some time, but just sit down and just read and learn about them and understand them, and you will be very glad that you did, because you will be able to know what happened on that day.
Yeah, and that's a good point. You have to know for yourself. You have to study it for yourself. But to give a few references, you can go to drjudywood.com, or you can buy the book or borrow the book from a friend, Where Did the Towers Go? Evidence of Directed Free Energy. I think that any person needs to understand that evidence and why we are talking about it.
I agree. And a lot of people also kind of have developed the attitude, well, it was so many years ago, what's the point? And there's many points. And one of the points is that the wars are still going on. The wars that were started because of 9/11, they're still going on. Number two, our rights and some of our legal protections, even though they're not as good as they used to be, they're continuing to get worse, and our freedoms are continually being eroded upon and encroached upon, including fundamental things like free speech and the ability to disseminate media and literature. Things like that are becoming increasingly attacked. And again, a lot of it has to do with the Patriot Act and with post 9/11 policy changes. And so by addressing this topic, we can address those as well. And on top of that, the technology is probably the biggest thing. The fact that what you can actually know and understand about 9/11 can help you to know and understand that there is a technology that can make our world a much better place. Our cars don't need to continue to run on gasoline. We don't have to rely so heavily on fossil fuels because there is a technology floating around that needs to become more widespread and more known to the public.
There is certainly a new technology that is in existence that basically can provide free energy for the world, and we have seen this through the evidence of Where Did the Towers Go by Dr. Judy Wood.
Yeah, and another part of the story that I forgot to share earlier that I'd like to really emphasize is involvement of Wikipedia in the censorship of this evidence, and what is going on, and why they are not only are they not sharing the evidence, but they're actually actively preventing it from being shared on Wikipedia, despite the fact that it is a public forum and a public place for discussion. So I signed up for an account on Wikipedia so that I could edit it, because it's available to be edited by the public. And I created a page devoted to Dr. Judy Wood. I created a page that talked about her academic credentials, talked about all of her peer-reviewed publications. She has many, many peer-reviewed scientific publications in major engineering journals. And her efforts as an academic professor, as a scientist, as a researcher, they are just unbelievably powerful in and of themselves, aside from all of this 9/11 effort that she has also put forth. So I thought that she is well deserving of a Wikipedia page. You know, there's many people who have done much less for the world and achieved much less with their lives that have Wikipedia pages, and I thought, of course, she deserves one. And so I created a page, put a lot of her information on there, and in one small section of the page, I mentioned her efforts in the 9/11 truth community. I mentioned that she has assembled a lot of facts. I mentioned that she has taken these facts and actually sued the private corporations that were involved in the phony 9/11 investigations and the science fraud that occurred during those investigations. She actually sued them based on scientific merit, based on the Data Quality Act, trying to hold them accountable for the science fraud that they have put forth that continues to affect the world till this day. And I put some documents from her court case on there, and it was just amazing, because within a few hours of creating that Wikipedia page, someone had already deleted it. Some moderator with higher powers had already deleted the page. And I tried to recreate it, I tried to appeal it, and that moderator would not allow that to be done, no matter what reasons I gave. And so my next step was to try and insert her name and website into the Wikipedia page called 9/11 Truth Movement. Because Wikipedia is not against discussing 9/11 truth. They even have a page called the 9/11 Truth Movement page on Wikipedia. So I thought, well, if I can't have her own page, then of course I can stick it in there. You know, stick a link to her website, stick her name, and mention her court case there. And after reviewing that page, I felt even stronger about that possibility and that decision, because there are many, many less qualified people who have contributed much less towards the actual discovery of the truth and alerting the public to the truth than Dr. Judy Wood has. For example, David Ray Griffin, who is, I believe his PhD is in theology, you know, the study of religion. He is mentioned on that page several times. He has got lots of information there discussing him and books he's written, and he's not even a scientist. And so I thought, well, of course, like, she definitely belongs on this page. I'm going to stick her in there, and hopefully this will bring more attention to the facts that she has discovered and assembled for us. And unfortunately, someone was even moderating that page very, very closely, because within a matter of minutes of inserting one or two sentences about her into one of the paragraphs and inserting a link to her website at the bottom of the page where the supplementary links are all posted, there's a whole bunch of links at the bottom of the page, so I put her website on that list of links. Within a few minutes, someone had detected that and had deleted out those sentences I had added and deleted out the link to her website that I had added.
It seems like her.
Very alarming.
It seems like her name might be flagged on Wikipedia.
Yeah, I would agree. Those are my suspicions, that someone or a group of people were actively censoring and watching for any information about her, and they were just suspicions. You know, I didn't have any proof of it. I had this suspicious behavior, but the actual proof came during the appeal. So because it's a public forum, you're able to appeal decisions that are made by higher-ranking moderators. So if you feel like you've been mistreated, or if you feel like information is not being edited appropriately, you can appeal those editing decisions to other moderators and see what they think too. So I appealed the process. I appealed it to see if I could get people to look closer and see the censorship that was happening. And the public policy of Wikipedia, I believe, is that public appeal discussions are meant to stay open for several days. I believe it's like 5 to 7 days, so that enough public moderators can log in, look at the debate, weigh in, give their vote, and then a decision is made after several days. Within something just like 12 hours, my appeal discussion was closed and locked down so that no one else could comment on it or edit it. And so that was a violation of Wikipedia's own policy in the way that this was addressed. And so in that process, I started actually individually messaging the moderators and saying, look, you have violated this website's policy. You know, you have completely broken the rules to try and censor this information that is completely appropriate for this page, and more important than anything that's currently on this page. And I'm very unhappy about this, and I'm not going to stop bringing this up. I'm going to appeal it again and again and again until I get some type of real answers. And that is when two very, very important things happened, both of which I've documented with screenshots, and we've created an internet article so that people can actually see what happened to me when this occurred. One is that my account was banned. So they completely banned my account because I was pointing out that they had broken the rules of the website to try and censor the information that I had put on there about Dr. Judy Wood. So that was one thing, that I was banned. My account was completely locked down so that I could no longer edit, no longer message other people. And then number two, that's when I got a message from one of the moderators that were involved in helping shut down the conversation and helping to censor the information that I was putting onto that page. And his user account was named Hoopabloob. Again, you can see these screenshots. I can refer you to the actual websites where they're hosted. But ultimately, it's what he said that is the second and most important thing of what happened with the Wikipedia exchange. He literally said to me, he said, I would give up on this topic. I would give it a rest. It's a waste of your time, because even if you came up with good reasons, better reasons that she should be mentioned on this page, they wouldn't let you anyway because she is on a block list. Her name is blocked. And so he admitted to me that there is a block list that Wikipedia has, and her name is on it. And so moderators are instructed to reflexively just block any mentioning of her or the material that comes with her name as part of their part of the way the moderator system works there.
Wow, they have a special flagging specifically for Dr. Judy Wood. That's amazing. Wikipedia censors Dr. Judy Wood.
Yeah, and it's amazing. And on the other side of things, they do not censor any of the other 9/11 Truth individuals. There's full-fledged discussion about Richard Gage and Thermite and Alex Jones and Dmitry Kalazov, but no mentioning of Dr. Judy Wood. So it's okay to talk about everything else, thermite, bombs, explosives, nukes, jet fuel, whatever, but don't you dare talk about Dr. Judy Wood, otherwise they're going to freaking block that and they're going to ban you. So it's just amazing. And it's all documented in screenshots and actual snapshots of what actually happened, so you can read the exchange for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it or anything.
Right. And so you also run the Facebook page. What do you experience on the Dr. Judy Wood Facebook page? Do you get criticism from that?
The Dr. Judy Wood Facebook page that I created, it's now over 5,000, has 5,000 supporters to it, so it's growing nice and steadily. But most of the feedback I get on there is actually quite positive. There's a lot of people who just didn't know that all of these facts exist and all of these well-documented pieces of empirical evidence exist. And when they find them, even though the Facebook page only has a very small fraction, there's only 500 or so pieces of evidence there, compared to the thousands and thousands that there truly is. between Dr. Wood's book and her website, they still find those facts to be so important that they're sharing the information, they're telling others about the information, they're discussing the facts and the evidence. So there's a lot of good discussion that's happening on the Facebook page as well. Unfortunately, there are occasional people, for whatever intention, whether purposeful or accident, that do attempt to derail discussion and attempt to misdirect discussion. Everything from sometimes people will come and call names. They'll just come by and call Dr. Judy Wood a really nasty name. Other people will attempt to spread unfounded, unscientific rumors and claim that I'm a disinfo agent or Dr. Judy Wood's a disinfo agent, just stuff like that, but does not actually address the evidence.
I tend to see a lot of people say Judy Woods, and they always say that she has theories and her theories aren't proven. Do you get a lot of that?
Yeah, people do mention that. And again, it's just a misunderstanding, and that's why I tried to share that analogy earlier about the dog, because just like with the situation of the dog, it was not a theory at all. It was an irrefutable, inescapable conclusion shown irrefutably by the body of evidence that was offered, that in that hypothetical example, the pet that I'm talking about was a dog. It would have been theory to go beyond that and to speculate or theorize about what color of dog I have or what specific breed of dog I have, because those things you could not irrefutably extract or conclude from the evidence. But the actual fact that I, in that hypothetical example, that I own a general type of animal known as a dog, that is an irrefutable fact that requires absolutely no theory and no speculation. And that is similar to how 9/11 is. If people just take the time to understand all of these important facts that are just sitting there staring us in the face, available to anyone with access to her book or to the internet, they can know that there is this inescapable truth, this irrefutable conclusion, not a theory, not speculation, but an actual truth that you can know that a general type of weapon known as a directed energy weapon was used to turn most of those two towers to very fine dust in midair before they ever hit the ground. And that is an irrefutable fact that a lot of people are still catching up to. And that's okay. But it would be theory or speculation to go beyond that and try and guess the specific location of the weapon or the specific serial number of the weapon. And so a lot of people want to try and focus on that. A lot of disrupting people, for whatever their intention might be, they want to try and focus on the unknown, things like that, and try to distract from what is actually known. Because it's a very powerful thing when you tell someone, like, this is a fact, like, this is something you can know, that directed energy weapons were used on 9/11. And so I don't say it lightly, and I encourage everyone to look at the facts for themselves so that they can come to that conclusion on their own. But that's where we're at. And there's a lot of people, for whatever reason, whether they're just misled or whether they're purposely trying to promote false and bad and misleading information, that purposely want to try and distract away from that evidence to prevent people from realizing that inescapable conclusion, that irrefutable factual knowing that comes from the evidence. It really is true that you have to look at the evidence in order to understand what happened. You can't try and jump to the conclusion of how they did it or who did it or why they did it. You really have to start with, well, what actually happened? You know, did the buildings get blown over by the wind? Did they just fall over? Did they crumple to the ground because they got weak? Were they turned to dust in midair in a matter of seconds? Or were they blown up, you know? And once you look into the facts and actually see what happened, it's irrefutable, and no one can prove you wrong because it is the truth, and it is the only answer that can explain the evidence, which is that the buildings were turned to fine dust in midair before they hit the ground. Most of them were. Some of the lower levels were not. But the resulting rubble pile was no more than like 3% of the original building height at most in the tallest areas. Most of the debris field was 1% or less of the original building height. But even in its tallest areas, those areas were only about 3 to 4% of the original building height at most.
Absolutely. Well, that's all the time we have, but thank you for being on the show, Dr. Abraham Rodriguez. and I hope to have you back again.
Thanks for having me, Ryan, and thanks for caring about this important topic.